Hello, everyone. My name is Nicholas Lamar Soutter, and welcome to In Time. I'm getting a little tired of constantly having to say that there are unique and extraordinary circumstances going on, but indeed, as we've seen in the last year, it's been quite extraordinary. Um, Today, there's been some good news, some bad news, a lot going on. There have been massive outages of all major phone networks across all parts of the United States today. AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, and Verizon have all reported significant brownouts and blackouts across all aspects of phone and network usage. So I actually was on a number of phone calls today and was blaming other people as the connection kept getting disconnected. I'm still going to blame other people. I have no interest in blaming third parties, but probably it was Tony. But at any rate, there is as of yet no determined cause as to what's causing these outages. It's a little odd to see it across all networks, but networks actually lease the bandwidth over the same lines, so something's going on. During Hurricane Dorian in 2019, Donald Trump said that the hurricane might well hit Alabama, which NOAA had projected it certainly would not do. He made it up and took a marker, drew on the map, an official NOAA projection map, drew a new path where it ran through Alabama. We all remember this. He made it up, just made it up. For whatever reason, nobody know. At this point, I don't think anyone can know or should even bother trying to figure out what's going on through his mind. But nonetheless, Acting Administrator Neil Jacobs, Deputy Chief of Staff, and Director of Communications Julie Roberts were both, at the time, asked by the Trump administration to back up his claims that the projections allowed it to maybe hit Alabama, and they did. This was in violation of the NOAA Code of Ethical Standards and the Agent Scientific Integrity Policy. They have been officially found to have violated those earlier today. We'll figure out what happens to them, but people need to be standing up for truth, I think, a little bit more across this country. The US Supreme Court has declared today that the laws that that federal laws do indeed protect LGBTQ workers from discrimination. This is a landmark ruling which deals a blow to the Trump administration, which has argued that the Civil Rights Act does not apply to gender identity and sexual orientation. The court in I believe it was a 6-2. Oh Jesus! I forget the number. Somebody in the live chat, I'm sure, will throw it out. But it wasn't as narrow a margin as it could have been. Two conservative judges, including I believe the Chief Justice, have sided with the against the Trump administration and said that indeed the Civil Rights Act does apply to LGBTQ. It was 6-3. Yeah, thank you. I almost said 6-2. All right, 6-3. Thank you very much. So they have. I think that's a big victory. I think for a great many people who've been fighting very hard for that. It's one of those that it was Roberts and Gorsuch. That's right, Gorsuch, who had voted with that. I think people hadn't anticipated. It's very hard to say what's going to happen to people when you put them on a court. A lot of times conservatives become more liberal on a court and vice versa. The next president is probably going to put on several Supreme Court justices. That's one reason why this election is so immensely important. We will be covering that, and we will be covering what the Supreme Court does in general in our continuing series on American civics, which is supposed to be the second Thursday of every month. Mr. Landon Knoll is going to be unavailable for this coming one, but he'll be doing another one shortly, and we look forward to having him back for that. Let's start with this. Over the weekend, there were a number of arrests in Atlanta, several dozen arrests in Atlanta. Rayshard Brooks, a black man, was shot in the back twice by Atlanta police officers. The police officer who shot him has been fired, and the chief of police has stepped down, but it has nonetheless drastically increased the size of the protests in Atlanta and caused several more buildings to be set on fire in protest. Along with that, as the protests and the Black Lives Matter movement gains traction, there has been a very dark pushback against it. A number of black men have gone missing and then discovered hanging from trees. A fourth man went missing and was discovered just hours ago hanging from a tree in Houston, Texas. They are being treated as homicides. We will be following that. My hope obviously would be that it's not going to get any worse than that. That being bad enough, I think everybody knows it will. We have had a very difficult discussion on In Time, a number of them, including what would happen if the FDA approved hydrochloroquine as a drug and emergency treatment for COVID-19. We were very strongly against it. We said that it would result in more deaths, and the reason why is because, A, there was no evidence that it worked. None whatsoever. Not only that, but it's a toxic drug, and if you give a toxic drug to somebody who's already very sick, you're going to kill them. We predicted that the emergency declaration wouldn't last and that it was done exclusively as a result of pressure by this administration and Donald Trump, who, once again, for whatever reason, because his gut told him that that drug is good and, hey, quote, couldn't hurt. Based on that pressure, the FDA did approve that drug. Today, they have withdrawn the emergency approval for hydrochloroquine and for chloroquine in the treatment of COVID-19 after 2 studies have found that it more than doubled the mortality rate if you took it while sick. There is still a third one in, I've forgotten unfortunately which state, I want to say Wisconsin, which I believe is actually in the process of doing a study where they are treating COVID patients with hydrochloroquine, fully expecting that it's going to, for some reason, do the opposite of what all the scientific data thus far has said it's going to do. We also had discussions on what would happen if the U.S. opened too early, which the media likes to suggest is still preventable, that it's being opened in stages, and so everything's going to be fine. I'm sorry, it's not true. We've been opening too quickly, and we are starting to see the effects of it. This is just starting. It's going to get worse. The latest projection is now that by October 1st, there will be over 200,000 Americans dead from the COVID-19 disease, virus. Oregon and Utah have now paused their reopening. Hospitalizations and infections have reached a record high in Texas. Houston's Energy Stadium is being converted into a field hospital as we speak. Texas, Florida, South Carolina have all recorded record infections. Fauci is saying that this trend is disturbing, quote, disturbing. 12 states have seen between a 10% and a 50% increase in new cases since the last week. And 7 states have seen over a 50% increase. We're going to be covering this a lot, I think. I've been looking forward to taking a break. We now have a very righteous movement, which has unfortunately come at probably the worst possible time. At the time people need to be spending the most time apart from each other, they are instead protesting. I think there's going to be a lot to cover. Again, the increase in 200,000. So far, every projection that has come out of this government has been dead wrong. And as we get closer and closer to the date, they have to up those projections. So now it's now 200,000 Americans. We'll see. An amazing series of events have transpired in Seattle. Thousands of protesters have sectioned off 6 city blocks and declared it the Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, or CHAZ, Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone. Now, they declared themselves initially free from all government. This includes civil, local governments, and the federal government. This is actually an act of that's an act of sedition. It's also an act of secession, meaning they've essentially declared themselves their own country. A number of people decided they didn't really like the implications that come from that, so they decided to relabel themselves to the Capitol Hill Organized Protest, or CHOP. There is some discussion over whether it should be CHOP or CHOP. There is discussion over what precisely are their goals at this point. We do know that they have successfully kept a number of, well, they've successfully, to the best of anyone's knowledge, they've kept uniformed government officials and police out of this zone. There has been a lot of speculation. It's been hard. Fox News has been saying one thing, and it's been very hard to corroborate a lot of what they're saying. I've heard, we have not corroborated yet, but we've heard that the power and electricity is going to be shut off to that area. We have not corroborated that. There's a number of things we haven't corroborated that we're sort of looking into. My hope is that Trump's new demeanor of just sort of letting these things play out is going to stay in place. We've had conflicting reports of what's been in there, at least certainly during the early days. It appears that there may have been, people who were armed. Now, maybe not so much. It's very hard to know what's going on. We do have a guest with us today. I'm going to bring him out in a minute. Fourth Dimensional Jake is with us. He has actually been in that zone, and he's going to tell us what it was like and what he saw. We also have a few extra pieces of footage of some things that have happened just in the last hour. There was a shootout in Washington, D.C. It was a pretty intense shootout that was captured actually by a house security cam. We'll bring that up in a few minutes. And then the other thing that I think we're going to bring up is, I'll hold on to this video because I actually want Jake to see it. He's not going to be able to hear it, but at a minimum, we'll be able to let him see it. So let me bring out Jake, and he's going to have a little chat with us for the next half hour, 45 minutes. So without any further ado, Fourth Dimensional Jake. Jake, how are you?
I'm good, thank you, and thanks for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, you've also, it's interesting, we've seen you around. You've been around, and you've been a supporter of the show, which we certainly appreciate. And I know you're a fan of ProLibs too, and a supporter of ProLibs. So we don't, you know what? He said, he was desperate. You wouldn't believe how desperate he was to be on this show with you. He's like, you're having on Fourth Dimensional. And I was just like, nope, get lost. Jake, you have been to this zone. So let me ask you, when you were first thinking of going, what inspired you to go, and what had you heard? What were you expecting?
So the first thing I heard about it was at work. One of the gals there was talking about it, and her daughter said that she wanted to go to the autonomous zone and be there. And she lives like a block or a couple blocks away from it. And she said, oh, well, we'll just put a fence around our house and call ourselves part of the autonomous zone. And they're going to play like movies and stuff or whatever. And it just, I heard about how it started with the police shooting tear gas, like so much tear gas at protesters. Now, I don't know if they were at all violent at the time, but they shot so much tear gas at protesters that the neighborhood in that area, like for blocks, people were smoked out of their own houses. And this comes, I believe it was the same day. It might have been later than that, but shortly after the mayor of Seattle outlawed, banned the police in Seattle from using tear gas. So you have tear gas being used against people, even small children, even peaceful protesters. You have the mayor finally, after days and days of not speaking to protesters, coming out, speaking to them, listening to demands, and saying, okay, we're not going to use tear gas on our own citizens, our neighbors, our family. And then the police say that and attack protesters with tear gas. And so much of it just goes out and hits all these neighborhoods. I've been too quiet for too long. I've been too apathetic. And I said, I have to get out there. I've already been out to a protest in Tacoma and filmed pretty much the whole time I was there. And I have the ability. I can take some time. I can go out there and I can film what's happening. And I think it's our duty for those of us that are able. We should document this. We should stand up together and say, no more, end this. And this is one way that I can stand together with my brothers and sisters and help them out, make sure that nobody forgets, like, this is not okay. So that's kind of why I decided to go out there. I was going to...
And you said you've been... well, no, I'm sorry. I apologize. Please finish.
I was going to take Saturday off of work to get out there a day earlier because I had been hearing that police want to take over, and it's hard to tune out Fox News because it's right there. There's like a Seattle branch. My wife every day, she's like, oh my God, I heard this. And I'm like, okay, let me see. And it turns out a lot of stuff that I've heard from Fox News or Twitter turns out to be false. And so because of my job, I drive in Seattle and actually most of Western Washington, but I drive through Seattle a lot. And since the murder of George Floyd, I've seen protesters in all the major cities for the first few days. And I'm trying to remember which day it was that I drove out. I call it small town America. So if you're familiar with Washington, there's like Seattle, and then down there is like Olympia, and there's a lot of metropolitan up and down like that part of the sound. Then you kind of go into the woods, and that's what I'm calling small town America. You got small towns, very conservative, very right, very Republican for the most part. In just about every single small town, I saw like at least 5 protesters. And in a couple of small towns, like I stopped at a Starbucks and they said, oh yeah, no, we had protesters earlier, you just missed them. And when I went to protesters earlier, you just missed them. It is a hospital. So I go into the hospital and they're like, oh yeah, you just missed the protesters. We were, as a department of the lab, they're like, we were going to go out there, but our boss wouldn't let us, like a bunch of people in the lab. And apparently about 20 or 30 minutes before I got there, over 200 protesters marched from somewhere around the hospital to downtown. And again, this is right. This is the right side. It's not the liberals. It's not the left. It's not the Democrats. This is Republican. Yeah. And so this is shortly after we started hearing about how we got 14 countries at the time, maybe more, were out there protesting with us. So it's something that everybody seems to be getting up and protesting.
And now you said you've been documenting this.
Yes, I've been filming the 2 protests. I've been taking pictures where I can. There's a fine line between respecting privacy and documenting, and because these protests happen on public land, technically people can't tell you not to film, but you still have to be respectful of them. And so that's a hard point. So sometimes I just, like, yesterday, after we had walked back from Volunteer Park in Seattle, I spent. See, that was at like 7, and I left around 9:30. So somewhere in the neighborhood of about hour and a half, 2 hours, I just talked to people with the equipment off because, I'd run out of battery on my phone, so I couldn't be live streaming. But yeah, I mean, just sitting there talking to people, like some people don't want to be filmed, and I'm white, like obviously, like very, very white. Okay. If you're not listening to people, you're doing it wrong. I definitely have a lot to say, especially when I'm in the right mindset.
Oh, yeah.
But you have to remember to shut up and listen. Yeah. So as and then again, a lot of these people didn't want to be filmed. So I tried to make sure I at least took some time to listen without filming, without trying to do that. So where I was going with the all these protesters down in small America is my wife's always concerned because I'm driving through protests. Like I had to wait one day. I was headed into the middle of Seattle. I think this is the day before CHAZ or CHOP is the new name for it.
Yeah. That's what
Capitol Hill ongoing protest rather than the autonomous zone. So, I sat there right off the freeway downtown Seattle, waiting for protesters. Like I'm not sad at all. I'm sitting there waving my hand, honking the horn, like hell yeah. And on my mask that I wear for work, I got black BLM on it. Mm-hmm. So at least if I can't paint BLM on the side of the truck, I can at least wear it on my mask. So I'm always out there near them. So she's always like, hey, blah, 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 this is happening. And almost always it turns out to be overblown.
And okay, so you decide you're going to go. Your wife is obviously very patient, and frankly reminds me of my wife on this. I think you said something about shutting up more and listening more. I'm sorry, I tuned it out. I didn't hear what you said. But so you decide you're going to go. You get there, and so what's the first thing you encounter? Is there a gate? Is there an armed patrol? What's there when you get there?
Okay, so I drive up, and I come up on Pike and Broadway, which is the west side of it. And then I drive around looking for a parking spot because it's Sunday. So that was another reason I wanted to go on the weekend because it was quicker than coming on a Monday. Like I know I have Mondays off usually. So I could have gone today, but instead I went yesterday because free parking in Seattle, most places anyways. So I drove around looking for parking, and there are signs. They took the barricades that were for the police barricades, and took control of them, and they got signs on them. One of the things that I had heard from Fox, well, I think it was Fox News. This one was definitely Fox News. Was that police? This is Sunday morning. Police are arresting protesters, arresting people coming in and out of CHOP, and that people in CHAZ are holding people hostage. Right, and they don't want people coming in and out. Well, the first sign that I noticed was everybody's welcome, come in, come out, no cops.
Almost everybody's welcome.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I'm smarmy. I apologize. Please continue.
No, I mean that is the first thing that I noticed. Besides, like if you ever been outside the state fair, at least here in Puyallup, which isn't too far away, the streets are filled with people walking in, walking out, and people like to just come and patron businesses around without necessarily going in as well. The amount of people I've been seeing there since Friday, Friday or Saturday, I think it was Friday, just tons and tons of people, thousands of people. Yeah, I'd say thousands of people between going in and out of the area. And mute. So you're seeing a lot of people come in and out, similar to like a state fair. And I'm seeing these signs. People seem like upbeat. And another sign that I think is probably the next sign that I really noticed was no good cops, no bad cops. Everybody else is welcome. So similar to the other sign. I ended up finding a parking spot a couple blocks away and walking down. And at all these entrances, there is somebody there. Some of them have chairs and things, but I did not see any weapons. I was told to expect weapons.
Okay.
And
told by Fox News or other people who'd been there, or?
Yes, and some of the pictures from the first day or the first couple of days did definitely have armed security. But when I was there, I did not see any. Actually, I should mention that on the freeway, because I live in Tacoma, that's about an hour south of Seattle. Between there and Seattle, I must have seen like 4 or 5 people pulled over, or maybe not pulled over. Like there's at least one person who was just having a tire change. But you know, the cops all along. As soon as I got into downtown, about half a mile away, I didn't see any cops, didn't see any police. When I was there the whole day, the whole evening, I didn't see any police until I left Seattle. So they appear to be avoiding that area, at least yesterday. So there's no cops around, and there's nobody with guns. And when I walked in, it was on Pine Street or Pike Street, one of the two. And there's it's like a 4-block long section, maybe 5-block long, and there is stalls, and a little bit further down there was free food everywhere, free waters everywhere, free masks with a lot of places. And there are people selling stuff. Like the shirt I got on today, I bought from somebody there. You know, again, I was able to help out, at least in that small way as well. But they were doing a Native American prayer dance when I walked in.
Okay, so Native American prayer dance. So yeah, that's not what I was. So now there have been some reports that it sounded a lot like a festival. Was that sort of your experience?
Yeah, it's a lot like a festival, but with a purpose. So yeah, it's more diverse than a typical fair, but it is very festival-like. Because one of the things about Seattle, I mean, I don't know as much about other places, is that Seattle, like the name Seattle comes from Chief Seattle. Chief Seattle's wife was a Native American slave. I should know more details around it, especially because they told us some of that at the thing. But we have to remember that it was their land first before us. So they also, being a minority, have much of the same treatment that the Black community has. So they took maybe like 45 minutes while I was there. I mean, it was going on before I got there to honor many of the tribes in this area and allow them to take part and do their prayer ceremony.
So, what is it that they want at this point? They have ostensibly sort of sectioned off. I think I've heard actually a couple of different reports, 8 or 6. Let's just go with a low number for now and say 6 blocks that is essentially under their control. What are they saying that they want at this point? And how, and is there an end game for them on this? Are they discussing it? Is there any kind of leadership? What's going on?
There is some leadership. As far as the size of it, there's a park. Part of the ongoing protest is the park. It is I can never remember the name of the park, but the park is like it's 2 or 3 blocks long and 1 block wide. In addition to the park, there are 7 other blocks that are under control. So if you include the park, it's 9. If you don't include the park, it's like 7.
All right. Okay, that explains why the numbers are so hard to pin down.
It also is a little bit kind of depends on how you count it, because the streets are, the blocks, a lot of them have houses or businesses. So they kind of like got like a horseshoe around one area, and you could include that block or you could not include that block. So.
All right. So what I have here is that the organization, whatever it's being called right now, has 3 demands. 1, invest in the local community. 2, release any and all protesters who've been arrested. And 3, defund the Seattle Police Department. That is now, again, there doesn't seem to be like there isn't somebody that's actually like given a list of demands per se, but that sort of seems to be it. Is that what your thinking is? And
yeah. So those are like invest in local community, defund SPD, and there's a lot of talk about releasing the protesters. Those are, I'm trying to remember because I did get a good shot of speakers, like, and I'm trying to remember exactly. Let me see. There's also defunding the SPD is multifaceted, because it also includes, no more tear gas, no more choke holds, no more shooting suspects, or at least no more suspects that are running or moving and things like this.
Yeah. Shooting them in the back or.
Right, exactly. And no new youth jail. There is plans to put up a new jail for youth, for minors, and no more youth jail. That's a really big one. Why the F are we imprisoning the youth? A lot of them are too young to really have a handle on what's going on. A huge part of it is youth it is mostly Black youth. It's over 50%, but I think it's much higher than that is Black youth. There is a bill, a law. There's a RCW, that's Washington Rule Code. No, RCW, Rule Code of Washington. Mm-hmm. I have the number in my video, and I think on my live stream as well. But it basically says resource officer, and that means police in our schools, and we want them gone. And this is part of the demands is remove the resource officers. The only people who should be resource officers are counselors and therapists and guidance counselors. Like they should not be police. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's a big part of the demand is once you get rid of the police in the schools, you get rid of a huge amount of Black youth who are being put in jail for virtually no reason at all. You don't need a police officer to come out and handle a classroom. you need you need teachers that are trained to de-escalate.
Yep.
You need counselors. And so I think that's one of the really big issues there. And there's more to go into specifically on that right there. But I want to make sure I don't miss that is defunding the police and no more youth jail, no more police officers in our schools. No more of this tear gas and chokeholds and all that.
So, just to remind our audience, you recorded a lot of this. Your battery died, so we're unable to record as much actually there. But you spoke with a lot of people. This is all in a link, which is in the description already, and we may also update that later because you had done a poem. We talked about that, and since we can't upload that right now, we'll either get a link to that and put that in, or we'll bring that, or you know what? We're going to do another one of the hangouts where everybody can be there, and we'll do that then. But actually, before I ask you about that, I want to show you one thing. Now, you won't be able to hear the audio. You will be able to see this. It'll be small because you just have a small rendering of the back end here. But I'm going to show a video. Now, this is actually to a white protester. But if you imagine, this is something that has been done especially to blacks across this country for quite a long time. And this is, in my view, sort of the epitome of abuse of power. Now, what you're going to see here is officers, I believe this is in New York. Now, there's a protester that the officers would like to arrest. They cannot arrest him unless he does one thing. If he puts his hands on a police officer, they can arrest him, obviously. And in fact, if he causes any trouble while that's happening, resisting arrest and all this other stuff, he has to put his hands on the police officer, which sounds reasonable. However, this was a peaceful protester. Wouldn't do it. So, watch what they do in order to get it so that they can arrest this young man. You will be seeing this. This will be in the profile window right below me.
Don't touch him! 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 He's not resisting! He's not resisting! He's not resisting!
That happened 2 days ago, and I'd like to show that again because I think for some reason that wasn't. It may be that the dimensions in the way. Let's try that one more time. What I think you're going to see when you look at it, what you're going to see is that the man in the white T-shirt is not paying attention to what the officers are doing. He's got a bullhorn. He is doing his thing, and one of the officers goes out in front of him and then stops short so that this man will actually bump into the police officer and touch him, at which point he's met the legal criteria for arresting this man. Now, the man doesn't even realize that the officer's doing it, but instinctively moves out of the way so he doesn't collide with the officer. Officer moves in front of him again, officer moves in front of him again, and then just stands right in front of him where the guy clips his shoulder. It's an accidental contact. It wasn't deliberate. The officer was trying to engineer it. You can see the other officers sitting there like, did he touch? Oh, no, he didn't touch him yet. Oh, no, he didn't touch him yet. And then once he does, boom, they jump him. Okay, and now this guy is going to get hit with resisting arrest. He's going to get hit with assaulting a police officer. All of these things, the entire thing was staged and recorded. So let's see if we can see that one more time. I may have to pull that out if it's too hard to see in there. So let's see what we got. So you can see the officer.
Don't touch him! Don't touch him! Don't touch him! Don't touch him!
I'm going to do that one more time. I think that was much easier to see that time. I want to do it, and I'm going to narrate what's happening. But you can now see that this is escalated into a very large incident, and the guy didn't do anything. So you're going to see an officer to his left. There's the officer on the left. The guy is carrying something. Now the officer's actually already tried to get him to touch him several times. It fails. He stops short. Doesn't work. He does it again, and the officer takes a step back so that he can come into contact with the guy. Guy is trying to go around the officer. Boom, contact, and now he's arrested for assaulting a police officer. That is, in my view, the epitome of the kind of abuse that we're looking at, where the law that says, hey, look, you have to be reasonable. You can't arrest people for no reason. They have to, and it's just the way it's phrased is they have to touch you. They have to, but the intent is clear. The officers are getting around that and arresting an innocent person. That happened 2 days ago. And with everybody already know, I mean, I have to believe police officers across this country are aware that this kind of thing are getting recorded, that this could come back to haunt them. They did it anyway. Have you seen anything like this, or what are your thoughts on this kind of thing?
Oh, that makes me so mad. Like, when you had the guy on last time with the lawyer, where we did the hangout.
Uncivil law.
Yeah, uncivil law. The thing I had asked him is, what is the precedent, as far as he knows, for those people filming George Floyd to step up and take charge of that situation, stop the police from doing what they did? And I haven't been in that situation, but
that's how people end up dead.
Yeah. Do you have an idea of how many protesters were right there at the time?
Well, there was a lot of people right there at the time. I do think that's one thing that causes officers to overreact sometimes, is so somebody steps up and says, hey, don't do that. They pull out a gun and say, back off. And the reason they do that is because if they, in their view, I don't necessarily concur, but I think in their view, if they don't show overwhelming force there, the four of them are going to lose control to the number of people who are actually there. I think that's a poor attitude. I think that's sort of an entrenched attitude, and I do think that this country's police do have that. I think there's a number of reasons they have it, but yeah, they have it, and I think it's a problem.
All these battle scenarios are just going off in my head. Like, what would I do? You have a lot of people. I won't say them because I don't want to suggest anybody does that. But it makes me so angry. I haven't seen any of this in person. The police in Tacoma, they were, I wouldn't call them friendly, but they didn't seem to be aggressive.
No.
In the middle of what I was doing, of the protest in Tacoma, I had to run home, get a new memory card, charge my battery for a couple minutes, and grab a drink and a couple bites. So then I run back to the protest. And then this was taking place in front of City Hall, the county city building in Tacoma. Mm-hmm. When I caught back up with them, they were about a mile down the road, and actually towards the downhill side of Tacoma downtown. And this was near Union Station, I think it's called, the old train station, UW Tacoma. And as I'm walking up, I hear something going on. And I did catch some of it on the recording. That's the first video that's actually I've uploaded to the Jake 4D channel. It's about 2 hours in. As you'll see me turn on the camera, and I lift it up. And if you listen real good there's a girl. She screams out, "He touched me. He tried to grab me." And she said something else. I can't remember exactly what she said. I got the impression that it was one of the police officers, because right after she says that, it's about, I think it's like 7 police officers on bicycles go off further down Pacific Avenue, about like 100, 200 feet further down. So it could have been counter protesters, because there were definitely some there. You can hear that at that spot too. And there's a lot of wind noise. I've fixed that a little bit better this time. But so I'm not saying it was a police officer, but I felt like it at the time, and after re-listening to it, that she may have been touched by a police officer, and it felt like something just like that video right there. But yeah, at the CHOP in Seattle, there was no police presence at all. Like this is the thing that Fox News keeps putting out is, and I'm picking on Fox News because I know for a fact they put out these lies that, like I said earlier, of people being arrested and all this, not at all. Like 100% peaceful protest. The protest in Tacoma, the first thing they did that day before I got there is they had said, we know some of you have weapons. We know some of you are instigators. Get out of here. We do not want you here. This is peaceful. We're going to keep it peaceful. And up until I had left the protest in Tacoma about 9:30, it was completely peaceful. And everybody gone home. Other people came out and broke some windows during the night, but it was not the same group. And then in Seattle, there was constantly, making sure it stays peaceful. People organizing, making sure it stays peaceful. When people yelled up in the crowd, most of the time it was like, yeah, we're with you. But there were some like disagreements, but it was super minor and it was immediately taken care of and resolved. Like completely peaceful. Everything here has been peaceful. So, yeah.
That's why, and actually I saw a couple of housekeeping announcements too, but I will say this, that's why, so I'm not a fan of Fox News in general for a number of reasons. They are dead to rights on lying about a lot of stuff. And I mean dead to rights, showing fake videos, showing all sorts of, it gets pretty bad. Having said that, they have a news division that operates reasonably well, better than most people give it credit for, but separating out that news division from sort of the rest. And even then, in some cases, that news division I'm seeing faults with it. But that's one reason why. So Fox News has made a lot of claims, and we wanted to corroborate it before going on. And we will go with Fox stuff if it's corroborated, just like we need corroboration with anything. But we haven't been. So I really appreciate you coming on, because there's a couple of different narratives out there, and it's very hard. There's one narrative of people running around in sort of their own militia uniforms, and that this really is an attempted secession, and then another narrative where, look, it's just peaceful people singing songs and doing bongo drums and selling stuff, and just sort of, it's almost a sit-in is what it sounds like. Certainly appreciate someone who's been there coming there. I will say we have Xander in person in our live chat. He's been a big supporter of the show. He's been unavailable for a while. He's one thing that we're going to have to do with him is, as most people know, and in fact, if you were listening about 4 or 5 days ago, I did my gun rant. I personally am for gun control for a number of reasons, and in fact, people know I own the Atheist Codex. I also, on the same day, bought the Gun Control Codex. So I'm very big, but his Andering has some very good arguments that I've enjoyed discussing, and so we are looking for. We still haven't had a debate on in time. We've been looking for our first debate, and we were planning on setting one up with him, and then he's been cross country. he's unfortunately he's been shipping, so he's been otherwise occupied. But with any luck, he'll come and we'll at least discuss the Second Amendment, which has, I think, some to do with where we are now. And also, just one other thing. No, the world is not coming to an end. Well, there may be signs of it, but not North Korea. South Korea, it appears, has been moving their military up into northern area. And I've been getting like DMs during the show about it. People are like, "Oh my God, are you gonna go?" We've looked into this right now. Our judgment is it's a tempest in a teapot. There is some media reports that looks like the South is actually being hostile towards the North and North Korea. North Korea has repositioned some of their troops. It appears they're in violation of one of the there's like a dozen treaties over there. They're in violation on one of the demilitarized zone treaties. It's considered a minor one, but this is more a political setback than a any move towards war between the North and the South, but it's a lot of the media is getting a hold of it. We're not going to cover it, I think, at this point, unless it gets significantly worse, which we don't anticipate. It's big news, but right now I don't think it's a big thing. But thank you for those of you who were interested in that, and that's why we're not covering it. Right now, yes, there are news sources that are taking it very seriously. We are not one of them. And for reasons. We're pretty sure that this is just it. It's a repositioning. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. Anyways, I do apologize. So you've got a channel. And we've dropped now a link to that channel. There's also one in the description. So and that's why we appreciate having you come on. In Time really does try to get a lot of its stuff from people that we speak to, people who are actually there. In fact, we know someone in South Korea that we happen to also reach out to and say, "Hey, dude, what the hell's going on?" So and then we've got you coming on tonight. So do you plan on going back?
Yeah, I definitely do plan on going back. I have to figure out timing. I can't always spend too much time away from my kids. It's about an hour, depending on traffic, maybe as little as 45 minutes north of me, and then parking and all that. And then once I'm there, I want to spend at least an hour or a couple hours there and this hour back. And so we're talking, half a day, realistically, maybe more than that.
Yeah.
And then it is definitely a very big concern of mine about COVID. I'm wearing a mask everywhere I go. I don't take it off except to eat whenever I'm out or maybe in my car. But that's not everybody. There are smaller numbers of people, but still a good amount of people who aren't wearing masks. And I can't think of any time during the speaking that they really emphasized putting on a mask. Now, the food vendors out there, they're giving out free food and they're asking people, do you have a mask? You should be wearing a mask. Take this mask. And a lot of people wearing the mask down underneath their nose, yeah.
Right.
So
I've seen a lot of that people, and we keep trying to tell people here the mask isn't to protect you. I think people think, well, I'm willing to take the risk, and they put it down, and it's okay if I take the risk right now. You're endangering other people. It's not you. It's nothing bad's going to happen to you per se for taking the mask off and not wearing it. It's everybody around you that's got oh dear Lord.
My mask protects you. Your mask protects me.
Yep.
It is so counterintuitive, but you can wear a mask. Come on. It is not that hard. Actually, that reminds me, on Twitter yesterday, I saw this, the deaf community is making masks with plastic over the mouth so they can lip read. Makes it, she said the communication just was very, very hard to tell. Like when she went into her doctor, she couldn't understand her doctor very well. When she started making the mask for her husband and daughter and friends, it just, her ability to communicate, I was like, that is the coolest thing. A, wear a mask. B, if you can, do it with a transparent plastic, it's not hard.
That's a really good idea.
Right? It is amazing. I shared it. And just the neckerchief, right? Fold it over. Put it on. The minimalist amount of protection for everybody else is all we're asking. Get over it. This is how I fix the world. You ready? This will fix everything in the world.
All right.
Everybody needs to get the F over yourself. You're not better than me. I'm not better than you. Get over yourself, and we're done. That's all everybody, everywhere, all at the same time. Get over yourself. Done. We're good. Solved.
I think you got it. Actually, I really think you got it. I was sitting there going, I want to hear what I was going to poke a hole in it. I was going to be really smarmy. I think you got it. I really do. Oh my God. Oh God. Yeah. Well, and it's certainly,
Details are a little fuzzy. I mean, how to
yeah,
do it, but just,
yeah. Well, that's all great minds just come up with the concept. The execution is somebody else's business. Um, well, no, and actually, it does work well too, because the most trouble I've ever gotten in my life usually has been when I'm not capable of getting over myself for whatever reason, whether it's, and I blame, one of the things I say all the time, I say, the most trouble I've ever gotten in usually is at a height of emotion, whether it's love, hate, anger, whatever it is. But that usually comes from, again, not being able to get over yourself, not being able to, in one way or another, you're taking yourself too seriously, and you're taking what did he just cut me? I'm gonna ram him with a. Yeah, I've been there.
yeah, I drive between 200 and 400 miles a day. So that guy who keeps cutting me off in traffic, oh man, it's a hard lesson to take myself.
I think you're right. I think if we could all sort of laugh at ourselves a little bit better, I think it would be better for ourselves, but I think it would also certainly make the world a much better place. Righteous indignation is not the kind of righteous indignation that Martin Luther King Jr. was talking about, but the kind that most of us enjoy fostering in ourselves. Like, how could he do that to me? And that's yeah.
So one thing I learned from the first protest I went to is that some people don't like to be filmed. And so what I did is I put a thing on my camera where I can put my phone. It's actually a little thing that comes out and has a little phone holder. And so what I did is put live on my phone so that as I'm walking around, people know that I'm recording live. So you'll see people duck out and people not, and people just smile and wave. But this is something that I decided to do because, in my estimation, I have no way of knowing what's going to happen out there. We've all seen the news. We've all seen the violent protests out there. And I have certain levels of disagreeing and certain levels of agreeing with that, depending. But I don't know what's going to happen. It could be peaceful, and thankfully it has been. But I figure the safest thing for me to do is to stream the whole event as much as I can, stream it while I'm there. So if something happens, at least there's a semi-permanent record of what happened. Like it's recorded on the internet. Somebody can go and look it up and find it. So if they seize my phone, they seize my camera, something happens to me, it's recorded, it's there. So I figured live streaming as much as I could is the safest way to go. That's why that's one of the main reasons I did it is safety.
There is a
I also
oh yeah, please.
I also got a lot of people in the, at least a lot of people for me in the stream, and it's on the Twitch one, which usually is for games, but yeah, there are people like yesterday there was a guy in from Germany and a guy in from somewhere else, and he's like, oh yeah, I'm glad you're not on a rooftop, but this one guy, he's saying, oh, Trump did nothing wrong, show me the Antifa with guns, and this, he looked like he was sitting there with Trump's Twitter here and my stream over here and just saying all this BS. And then people even from Germany, the guy from Germany, he says, what's wrong with you? Have you not looked at anything? Our own media covered him lying about such and such. And I'm just like, I don't know. It's just interesting. I just thought it was the safest thing to do. And you get people from all sides.
Well, I certainly appreciate, first of all, I think it takes a lot of courage to go out and do that. And I think, the other thing I wanted to say earlier, there's an app, and I've forgotten what it was. We mentioned it, I think, Landon Knoll mentioned it in the last show that he was on and did with us, but it's an app that will actually stream what you're recording to a recording service, so that if something happens to your phone, if the cops should quote accidentally delete the contents or accidentally run over your phone 12 times, the data is still saved, because it was as you were recording it was moved off of the phone. So I think that's a service you may wish to consider if you continue doing this. But I think it takes a lot of courage to do that. I applaud you going out and doing something. So I think that's I think that is something that makes the world a better place, and I appreciate that this is one of the things that you've done, and that you come on here to share it with us, because I think it helps our audience to see, to see what's going on and to hear you talk about it. So thank you very much for coming on. I really do appreciate it. Was there anything else you wanted to say before we wrap this up?
Yeah. Sorry, kids are going to bed.
Yeah.
I did pull out a couple of quotes from yesterday and from Tacoma on the 1st. One thing I did want to mention is the chants are different in some places, but most of them are the same. I didn't get all of them, but I did get a couple of them. The first one I wanted to highlight is, hey, hey, ho, ho, these racist cops have got to go. And that's maybe one of the biggest issues is racism. So and you have to remember, a chant is something that's easy to remember, easy to repeat, but you have to look into it deeper than just that. And then we have to remember how this started. So the next one I wanted to highlight is the leader says, say his name, and then the crowd shouts George Floyd. So say his name, George Floyd. Say her name, Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor, of course, is the EMT who was shot in her home. It was March something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was. Jesus, I don't remember the date, but yeah, it was. Yeah, the cops were serving a warrant, got the wrong address.
Yeah, and it was a no-knock warrant, which is completely messed up. Now, I've heard "no justice, no peace" a lot, but it's not. It's no justice, no peace, no racist police. So a lot of people don't include that last part, is no racist police. Like the reason there's no justice and no peace for people here while there's racist police. And of course, defund SPD. One I can't believe I didn't remember it until just now is Black Lives Matter. When do they matter? Right now or every day? Usually it's every day, but either ways, Black Lives Matter. And it's something I've been thinking about is you go, okay, we don't want people to be killed. That's like, duh, come on. But that's not the experience of, like a third of our country.
Yeah.
It's not just Black lives that are being targeted. It's all kinds of minorities. Indian, Native American, Hispanic, Latino, many other groups. And you don't have to be like, you can be just a small part white, as long as you don't even necessarily look white, or people know that you're not completely white, and you still get these targeted like this. So too many people are saying, well, duh, we shouldn't be killing people, but you have to understand what's going on. So then, okay, so from the Tacoma protest is on the long video. It's about 51 minutes, 18 seconds in. Let's see. The girl says, violence against property is not the same as violence against human beings. If we burn down a Wendy's, you can rebuild the Wendy's. You can restock the Wendy's. If you kill somebody, if you kill George Floyd, he's gone for good. Okay? When you kill somebody, when you harm somebody, you're doing harm to themselves. When you burn down property, again, I don't agree with that. I don't support that per se. I do definitely understand it, especially when it's been the target of racism against somebody. Like, you have a Walmart or you have a Wendy's, you have these low-paying jobs where people are. When you have a low-paying, terrible job, your people continuously get led into the same thing. And I can't remember if this was a Twitter post or if I'd heard it at one of the protests, but somebody was saying, when they applied for a home loan, the bank said, "Oh, can't somebody give you the down payment?" And she said, "Hey, I don't have that kind of family. Like, a big portion of the African American community doesn't have family who can give them anything, let alone a down payment." Where with a lot of white people, it's not the same. And it's not the same for everybody. It's like, don't get it wrong. It's not like every black person can't get anything from any other person and every white person has all this money. It's not that. It's a disproportionate income gap. And when you have places like Walmart, places like big fast food chains continuously feeding in, only giving low-paying jobs, and you can only get low-paying jobs, especially if you've been imprisoned unjustly or not. It's much, 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 much harder to get out of these situations. So burning down the target or one of the targets of racism against you, I understand it, even if I don't necessarily condone it. So,
the destruction of property obviously can't be tolerated, because if it's tolerated, then that's how people are going to resort to solving their problems. On the flip side, there's a difference between taking a life, or even just, taking an eye. How many people have lost their eyes because the rubber bullets have been targeting the head, knowing that that's how to maximize damage with a rubber bullet. There's a difference between doing permanent damage to a human being. And admittedly, and I've seen this argument, this is a legit argument. Well, hey, if you burn down somebody's business and it's a small business and the guy's got no insurance and you put him hey, I'm not saying burning down businesses is good. I'm not saying that. It is a problem, but it is not the same kind of problem as it's not the same scale as damage to a human life. They're two different things. They're both bad. They are absolutely both bad, and they both must be resisted and opposed. But anyway, that's my view, and I think that's roughly what you're saying.
Exactly. They are both bad. Don't condone either of them, but they're not equivalent and they're not directly comparable. So directly or almost directly after she says that, there's a little bit of chiming up from the crowd, and it's hard to hear. But the next thing this is something that I really wanted to get out, and I want to make sure I don't forget this. The gal speaks up, and she was one of the people in the Seattle protest on the previous Saturday, which would have been the 30th or 29th of May. She says, we have to be able to be wrong. I don't know if I got that quite right, but I remember her saying that. And then this is a direct quote, is it's going to hurt, but we have to be effing wrong. We have to be wrong. And what she's saying there is, because there's a little bit of talk about, white people stop telling black people how to protest. Violence against property is not the same as violence against human beings. And the other gal says, you have to let us be wrong. Okay. Us being wrong is necessary. White people get to be wrong. I'm expanding here, obviously. White people get to be wrong all the time, but you have to give that same ability to mess up, to be wrong without targeting people. So don't condemn as much as we do. People have to be able to be wrong.
That's well put.
So a little bit later in the video, this is going to be like some of it's quotes, some of it's a little bit. It's like it's all on my channel. It's the longer video. It's the first one. You can go listen to the whole thing. I've done my best to kind of make the sound audible. But this is what I got. So one of the other ladies, she says, when I was 11 years old in Ward, Ohio, the KKK in cloak and hood came out to my town to talk to my people about their ways. And then a little bit, I'm cutting it down for time. They came in a truck and a float and a microphone to speak their word. That was allowed. That was allowed. Police were barely there. They're here for us. This is Tacoma. They're here for us more than they were for them. And then she says, I have a 9-month-old, a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, and I'm afraid for them. And they have semi-white privilege. You have to understand these people. I don't want to say that. Okay. Our neighbors. Okay. They are afraid, and rightly so, for their life and their children's life and their family's life. So we have to understand that they are afraid. They are coming out to the protest, but they are afraid, and rightly so. And yeah, I mean, we have to understand that we need to be here for them. We need to stand with them. I almost didn't include this next. I think it's the next sentence she says. But I want to be fair. The next thing she says is, I am African American, but I am also Croatian, Czechoslovakia. I have so many races flowing through my blood. How can I be racist? And that's something that I completely 100% disagree with. Every single person, no matter what your background, no matter what your heritage, you can be, and probably to a certain degree, are racist. There's no such thing as reverse racism. Racism is racism. It doesn't matter if you are racist against your own people or racist against somebody else. Everybody can be racist. I don't want to dwell on that too much, but
and that's a topic I think we should definitely. I'd like to cover at some point. I mean, I tend to agree. I think actually no, I think I lost my train of thought on it. But I mean, I think I understand where you're going with that, and I think Please continue.
And I'm gonna. I wasn't sure how I wanted to tie that in, because it's important what the previous lady said. The previous gal is, she said we have to be able to be wrong, and I don't want to stand up here and say you're wrong, because that's not the focus. That's not the point of what's going on right now. So
good point.
Don't focus on that as much as we focus on standing together. And standing together, I've said this on Twitter, I've said this in streams, like standing together means being there for your neighbors, for your fellow human beings. It means going on Twitter and supporting them. It means going out there and supporting them. It means you don't have to be out there, but you can take a knee in solidarity. And taking a knee is also standing together, even if you're not literally standing and you're not literally together. You have to support them in what they do. That they may be donating, that may be offering support, that may be emotional support, that may be literally getting out there, but standing together with them is what's important. And this is all of your neighbors, all of us human beings. And today it means the Black community, the minorities in our communities. So the last thing that I saw when I left shop last night was another person getting up and speaking. This is after they had broken down most everything else, and just like they're continuously talking there. It seems like when you go there, different areas will have somebody speaking almost all the time. And she's talking about, you actually mentioned it at the beginning of the show, with people being lynched, hung in this country in 2020. And that's how she starts it. She's, or at least when I walked up, she was talking about somebody in, let's see, Lake Stevens. A Muslim teen was hung in Lake Stevens, and I have I believe I got the correct person. It was on, looks like March 14th is when the article came out, and it says reported hate crimes against Muslims has many fearing Ben Kita may have been lynched. That's part of the headline there. And what she said is, because she's talking about the many more people who've been hung lately. There's many more that I woke up to this morning. I'm not okay with that. I'm feeling that type of guilt. How many more of my people have to die for us to get what we want? I'm serious. How many? And what she's saying is, they're standing up. You know, we together are standing up against this racism and this bigotry. But there are people who are being targeted. There are people who are being attacked. And standing up means the certain people are going to come against you, and they're coming against them hard. They're killing people, they're hurting people, they're targeting people. The cops are doing it, the civilians are doing it. And this is the price to pay for standing up, and it has to be done one way or the other. But yeah, it definitely hits hard. I mean, it I don't know. I'm at a loss for words with that. It's just, I can't believe, like, in 2020, we're in the future now. I mean, I thought we were. We got all kinds of crazy stuff. I got a smartphone here that is many times faster than my computer was just a decade or and a half, 2 decades ago.
Oh, please. That's got more memory. That's got more capacity on it than the entire Apollo space program.
Yeah. Like my calculator has more than the Apollo 11.
Yep. Yeah.
like most developed countries in the world have things. I don't know if I'd mentioned this. Something that was spoken several times is healthcare for all. Most countries in the world, most developed countries, most first world countries in the world have Medicare for all. Part of the economic burdens that a big portion of our community has. Healthcare is a huge problem.
Yep.
And this is one of those things that disproportionately, meaning way more per capita affects our minorities, our Black community than it affects the white community.
Yep.
So, So I think there was one other thing I wanted to say is, I put this up on Twitter a couple of times, is you have no empathy for those you don't know. As familiarity grows, so does empathy. Most humans think about people we don't know, so we have a basic minimal empathy for people we don't know. Get out there, meet people you don't know, and talk to people who are different than you, especially people who are different than you. Build that empathy, build that familiarity, build that friendship. Even if it's not a friendship, even if it's somebody you despise, build that empathy, understand them, listen to them. Don't think you know everything. You don't. I've learned a lot of things that I thought I knew, that I did not know over the past few weeks. There's so much I don't know. So get out there, don't be apathetic, be proactive, meet people, talk to people, just talk and listen and build that empathy.
All right. Well, I think that is an excellent note to end on. Fourth Dimensional Shake, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you all for being here. We will be having Matt Dillahunty on tomorrow night to discuss the importance of debate. Do we still need it? What do you do when you're asked to debate? And maybe platform somebody whose ideas you really don't like. We're going to have him on and discuss that. Looking forward to that show. Next week, we're going to have on Christopher Mowdy to discuss the art of science communication. And looking forward to that one as well. So thank you all for joining us. I will be joining the, I'm going to be in the Discord, our Discord after the show for, at least 10 or 15 minutes, hanging out there for a little while. Anyone wants to come in and join us, we usually let these continue on over there. So I'll join anyone in the Discord who wants to join me. Thank you all again. Please remember, if you did like the show, please remember to like and subscribe, and I will catch you all later.